how to have this conversation. American farmers are the lifeblood of our country. Period. And Project Manifesto absolutely wants to destroy American farmers completely. Now, I know a lot of American farmers have been fooled by them, but that's because they misdirect. But let me explain why I have a dog in the fight, and I really don't, other than people I know and care about. My grandfather's family were farmers. They came over here from Germany in the 1800s. My grandfather was like 4th, 5th generation German American. They were good, salt of the earth type people, most of them. My grandfather owned a farm. He just rented out most of the land to another farmer who gave him a part of that. But my grandfather could make more money as a machinist and then as a foreman and then as a tool shop owner or co-owner than he could make farming, period. And that was in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, boys and girls. So this is not a lucrative industry for average America. Your average American farmer is not making a lot of money. Yeah, they buy those new combines and things like that, but that's because we subsidize them. We help them be successful. Some of them are better at it than others, but even the ones that are good at it will kill themselves to keep a family farm. Years ago, as a junior engineer, I had a group of maintenance guys in a small farming community. The plant there was the only real employer of any consequence. I mean, unless you count, the local bar. And I don't even think they had a McDonald's, if I remember correctly. It was just good old people, Everybody worked at the plant. If I remember correctly, this one maintenance guy, he had a degree from, I want to say, the University of Iowa. But he came back, take over the family farm, do what it took to keep that family farm running. And I'm telling this story for the people that don't understand what farming is, not for those of you that do. He, during planting season, and especially when the crops came due to come out, when they were ready, they were ready. And if you don't understand that, farmers do. When those crops are ready to come out, you got days, maybe hours to get them out. They have to come out. You can't allow them to go past. It's kind of like you leaving a vegetable out for a couple hours on your counter. 6 hours, 8 hours. Leave it out a whole day. You gonna eat it? Probably not. So he has got a limited amount of time, but he was working 16-hour days. We were shorthanded. He was the best that we had, and he knew it. It wasn't, not in a cocky way, but he needed the money. He's running, I think it was like a 200-acre farm. And he's not making enough money off the farm to take care of his family, pay all the farm-related bills, and he needed insurance. So he needed a real job. And when the crops were ready to come out, even though he'd worked a 16-hour day, he stayed up all night to get those crops out. Because he didn't want to risk working another 16-hour day and not having those crops out and losing that money. Average America cannot understand that position. I can't firsthand understand it, but I watched him. No-Nose, Monster. He was on point. And And I'm going to be honest, he was one of our brightest, and he deserved that in every way, shape, or form. And he could have been a top notch, whatever the hell his degree was in. He was smart. Is smart. I've lost contact, obviously, over the years. But he wanted to save his family farm. That's who he is. And our government subsidizes farmers like him, helps them with low loans to get that combine so he can actually have the lighting and the work ability in the middle of the night. We subsidize with low-cost loans. We subsidize with money to make sure he doesn't farm. They don't farm all that land all at once. All of those subsidies come out of a group called the Commodity Credit Corps. And I don't like the fact that we call these corps or corporations, because really they're federally funded. They should be called federal corporations if they're called corporations at all, because all the money is held in the Federal Reserve in a piggy bank designated just for whatever we designated it for. Okay? And so I want to talk about those subsidies mainly to help this guy that I'm talking about and everybody like him, because 1% of Americans are farmers, and that's who we're helping. Now, a lot of us get in our heads that 1% is corporations, because that's all we see, right? We see all these major corporations. We don't see the little guy. He's the little guy. 200-acre farm isn't little, but he's the little guy. And of that 1%, 99% of them are that little guy. Corporate America is not that little guy. And then we get it in our heads because the side of the fence, that right side that I used to be on, always conveyed this idea since way past Reagan, obviously, but at least in the last 30 years, that these people are all corporations making a lot of money. It's not actually 1% of 1% are corporations, and the other 99 of that 1% are average Joes, like this guy killing himself to keep his family farm. So what annoys me most about the Project Manifesto is it'll always go on and on and on about how everything like this and this, and they make it sound like it's their idea, but it's stuff that we've already done, like stuff that we did 100 years ago that's still in force, or stuff that we've done maybe in the last 50 years that's still in force. But they'll always tack in their own little bullshit, and that's really their goals, right? The idea that they're putting all this noise in and then making it sound like it's their idea and they're going to implement something that's already been implemented is a distraction, right? They wanted to make sure nobody of any real value would read that 1,000 pages. They just hunt and peck. And it was boring as fuck. So, and some of them can't write for shit. So yeah, it was hard read. But what stuck out in my mind as I read their attack on farmers was where they're going to point farmers is the section called Department of Agriculture. And over half of that is an attack on FICA and Social Security and sub-programs of that. They attack food programs for the poor. They attack WIC. They attack food stamps. They attack school lunch programs in that section. And they say they want to do away with all of that. And that may sound good to some farmers because they think, I don't need to be paying these subsidies and my taxes for this. And this sounds good to me. And it's really, they're talking about food. No, bitches, they talk a lot about farmers. And they talk specifically about eliminating the Commodity Credit Corporation and all the piggy bank funds of it in the Federal Reserve meant just to help that 1% that not only feed almost all Americans, but that feeds a good portion of the global 7 billion plus people on this planet. Why do those subsidies exist? Anybody remember the Dust Bowl? The Dust Bowl in the 1930s was basically caused by what we're experiencing right now. Uncontrolled temperatures, severe weather, severe flooding would kill crops. And the opposite side, severe droughts were making it impossible to even get the crops to grow in the first place. It got so bad that the reason we call it a Dust Bowl is farmers living out in the plain states, which is now called the Midwest, and I don't know why, but it is. But if you're Gen X or older, you probably learned them as the plain states. But farmers would literally tie ropes between their buildings, between their barn to go feed their animals and their front porch. And their, maybe their sheds that they kept other stuff. And if they didn't have running water and indoor plumbing, which most of them didn't, they had a rope to get to their own outhouse just to take a shit and come back safely if a major dust storm started and they couldn't see their way home, which was only 10 feet away. Well, maybe 20 with the outhouse. All these subsidy programs exist because of what we found out then. We found out that if the farmers were farming profitable, right? And not as much of the non-profitable. One, we didn't get as good of a mix of the crops. But two, all the nutrients would come out of the ground and nothing would grow anymore. And it would take years and decades and fertilizer and all this other shit to prevent that from happening again. And we've become really good at it in the last 100 years. We really have. We need that 1% that have been doing this, that have families that go back 50, 100, 150 years doing this. We've eliminated most of them because we don't want to pay them subsidies. And if you don't believe me, they tell them, again, while they're taking credit for 3 other things, they put these 4 bullet points together, and 3 of them are like, they're already going on, so who cares? And they say, limit spending to directly help farmers and ranchers. Address issues to unforeseen events. Now, they go ahead and talk about if it's not already covered by other programs, but they know goddamn well that they mean all programs and all subsidies. They do, because it all comes out of the same piggy bank. We're not stupid, are we? That's actually a quote. But more disturbing is later on they say the overall goal should be to eliminate all subsidy dependence. There's that word, dependence. You're sucking my lifeblood off of me. How fucking dare you farmers be dependent on me? Now, when I was on that side of the fence, we all know that right side of the fence is always portrayed as all these corporations are getting money, which is really weird because if those corporations are all getting the money, the subsidies, aren't they also your largest donors, like the Koch brothers? How's that making sense? I don't understand. Explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old. This is just the first of the farming episodes. I've got 4 more to do just to keep this under 15 minutes. Don't trust those fuckers. I'm telling you. And there's more to come for you to think about. Peace.